Hello everyone, I'm excited to be part of HVCKtheHills and I hope you are enjoying the event so far. In this session, we will look at how some of the oldest telecom protocols, SS7, is still alive and kicking in 2025, with attackers using minor tricks and tweaks to make old attacks more effective against modern defenses. So let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Ayman Elsherif, and I have been working in cybersecurity for over 12 years, mainly focused on the telecom side. I'm currently telecom security expert at SecurityGen, where I research new telecom attack vectors and security bypass techniques, in addition to leading security assessments of mobile networks. Before we dive in, here is what to expect today. I will keep it practical and focused on real-world cases. On the agenda, we will start with a short overview of publicly reported surveillance operation, a company that has exploited telecom networks for years, then follow up by a quick refresher on the SS7 protocol. After that, I will cover the technique used during the operation to bypass defenses implemented by telecom operators and describe another bypass techniques we found in our own research. Finally, we will explore why these keep happening and what can be done to stop it. So let's get started. According to research reported by TechCrunch, a new SS7 attack has been active since late 2024. It was part of a targeted surveillance operation by a company in the Middle East. The actor carried out the attack using signaling messages sent over the global interconnect networks using the same networks operators depend on to exchange traffic and connect calls and SMSs between each other. And the goal of those messages was to track the location of the victims. For a network to deliver calls and SMS messages, it has to know where each subscriber is or which cell tower they are currently connected to. Later, we will take a look at how this works and how accurate it can get. The research, which was carried out by ENIA, found that attackers were able to carefully tweak signaling messages so that they could evade signaling firewalls. These firewalls are deployed by mobile operators to block attacks on the signaling network. And when attackers manage to bypass them, the traffic can reach deeper into the network. Later, we will look into how that worked out when we cover the bypass techniques. These incidents point to a bigger trend. Surveillance vendors keep adapting their techniques, and we can expect more of these attacks in future. INIA has been tracking several of these vendors for years. In fact, the actor behind this case matches a surveillance company they have been following for a long time. This company runs a distributed system for SS7 attacks, launching them from multiple locations. Its main base is in the Middle East, with additional infrastructure in Africa, Europe, and Asia. Even though these companies usually work with governments, history shows that the tools often get used against the journalists, human rights defenders, and sometimes political opponents. Here's a telling fact. One of the oldest protocols, SS7, is still a favorite tool for surveillance companies. In order to understand why, compare that with a spyware like Pegasus. Remember Pegasus, the spyware developed by NSO Group? Pegasus became famous for its so-called zero-click exploits. Although these kinds of exploits doesn't need any actions to be performed by the user, it still requires something to reach the victim phone. And in some cases, the victim noticed something and the attack get exposed. But SS7 is different. It doesn't need to touch the device at all. Nothing shows on the phone, and yet surveillance companies can still track the victims, intercept their communication, and locate them. And that puts the responsibility mainly on the telecom operators and the carriers which connect them. They are the one who can defend against these kind of attacks. Subscribers has no power in this case. Now let's take a moment and start with a quick overview of the SS7 protocol. So what's the SS7? SS7 is a signaling system used in 2G and 3G networks. Basically, it carries out the instructions that set up calls, deliver SMS, handle roaming and subscriber mobility, and other telephony services for mobile operators. Mobile networks are made up of many parts. Some deal with the radio side, like connecting your phone to the towers, while others handle the core functions. SS7 is the protocol used to handle signaling inside the core networks and between core network and the radio part. It also connects mobile operators worldwide through an international backbone called IBX. Unlike the public internet, IBX is a closed environment used mainly by mobile operators, but access isn't restricted as it sounds. Other players like SMS aggregators, value-added service providers, and security companies also use it. And of course, attackers can still find their way in, as we saw with the surveillance case we discussed earlier. Some get in through rogue employees inside operators or through hacked telecom equipments. At the end, they usually finds a way into this IPX network. And of course, Big Brother, it always finds a way into this network. All of these passes open the door to serious threats. SS7 has been misused by adversaries for many years. The threats are well documented: interception of calls and SMSs, location tracking, fraud, and even denial of service attacks. Now let's look at the protocol stack. SS7 is not a single protocol. It's a complex stack of protocols that break down communications into layers, each layer responsible for a specific function. At the lower layers, you have the physical connectivity and transport, and as you move up, the higher layers handle signaling and application level services. For our purpose today, we will focus on just one layer, TCAP, or the transaction capability application part. The bypass techniques we will see later takes advantage of how this layer is structured and encoded. This layer sits on the upper part of the stack and provide transactional mechanism to other or upper layer services, mainly managing multiple dialogues or message exchanges between two nodes at the same time. When it comes to encoding, TCAP follows a standard way of structuring data called ASN.1, or Abstract Syntax Notation 1. It uses a method called BER, or Basic Encoding Rules. It's basically a way to format data into binary so it can be sent over the network. This method is flexible, giving several options for how data can be encoded, but that flexibility can also be risky, mainly because some implementations don't handle it properly while decoding, and attackers can take advantage of these mistakes. At the core, it relies on a simple structure called type length value, or TLV. Each piece of data starts with a type identifier, or a tag, then the length, and finally the actual value. The value itself can be something primitive, like a number or a more complex structure, which is built from multiple elements. For example, the MSICN parameter, which is basically the phone number you type on your phone, can be encoded in some messages using a special tag value of 80, followed by length, 8 byte in this case, and then the actual MSISDN value. That wraps the protocol overview. Next, we will explore the techniques that can be used to bypass signaling firewalls. I will begin with a technique that we covered during our research. We call it TCAP dialog manipulation. These techniques take advantage of part of the TCAP protocol called dialog portion. This portion or part is what maintains a conversation between two TCAP users, and it also negotiates the services that they are using or communicating for. It follows the TLV structure. First comes a tag, length, and finally a value. Here is a Wireshark trace showing a message called send routing info for SCM, which is part of SMS delivery procedure in mobile networks. The highlighted section shows the dialog portion. It contains multiple elements, but most importantly, the dialog BDO. In this case, one node is requesting a new dialog through this dialog request, which should be used for SMS services, which is determined by this application context name, ACN. For our purpose, we will focus only on the length fields. Other details are not needed. Generally, each element inside this message has its own length. For example, we have one field that holds the total length of the dialog portion, while another field holds the length of the inner dialog BDO, the dialog request in this case. In theory, if you change any of these fields, the packet should break, and the receiver shouldn't be able to understand it. But in practice, not all fields are handled the same. For example, the length of the inner dialog BDU, this one, should match the total length of the dialog portion, this one, minus the length of the inner fields, the fields between them, this part, length of this part. Okay. And since those elements are mandatory and always present, the value of the inner length field, this one, can still be determined even if it's corrupted. So at first, we thought this could be a potential bypass. We suspected that decoders in signaling firewalls and decoders in core network elements might handle it differently. Core network decoders often tolerate bad inputs if they can still read the message. So in our field tests, we increased the length of the inner dialog BDU, and our assumption was right. The packet passed through the firewall, and the target network accepted it, sending back successful responses. Let's look at how this simple tweak managed to bypass the firewall. In most firewall deployments, SS7 firewalls run in loopback mode, sitting alongside the STP, which routes signaling messages inside the network. The STP passes all incoming messages to the firewall, and then the firewall applies its rules and logic to decide whether to accept or block each message. And if message is accepted, the firewall forwards it internally again through the STP, then it reaches its destination. So first, we send a regular anytime interrogation message or ATI message. That's the type of message that lets you ask for subscriber location and state. It can be done using either MSISDN or MZ, which is another identifier that the network uses for subscriber. As usual, STP forwards the message to the firewall. But since this is an internal message that should not be allowed from external networks, its legitimate case is used only between internal nodes, not from external networks. The firewall will drop this message and will not allow it. So the message is blocked and the network is protected. In the second trial, we changed the length of the dialog BDU, the one highlighted in red. We just increased its value. As you can see, the message is now malformed and Wireshark can't even decode it. As you can see in this view, Wireshark displayed as a malformed packet, and it can't read its parameters. When we sent the modified message, the firewall couldn't parse it because of the modified length fields, and hence it didn't match any rule in the firewall. Many operators configure the firewall to simply pass through anything it can't understand, mainly to avoid false positives. And that's exactly what happened in our case. The message was forwarded to the internal network, to the HLR, which is a central database that holds the information about all subscribers, in addition to some other information about the location. And in response, we received the identity of the cell our test subscriber or test SIM was attached to. So how did we turn this into a location? There are multiple online services with massive databases of cell identities collected from real phones around the world. These databases map cell IDs to their approximate location. And by using one of these services, we were able to obtain a rough location of the test SIM. The accuracy of the location depends on the network setup and the generation in use. It can be anywhere from few meters to a few dozens of kilometers. Of course, the success of this technique isn't universal. It depends on the specific implementation of SS7 message parser or decoder of the firewall and the core network element. The next bypass techniques we will discuss is TCAP tag extension. This is a bypass technique used by the surveillance company we talked about earlier. This one takes advantage of how parameters like MSISDN and MZ inside the TCAP layers are encoded. These parameters follow the same TLV structure. Here is a Wireshark trace of the same message, send routing info for SCM. The highlighted section shows the component portion, where all parameters like MSISDN are encoded. This time we will focus only on the tag fields. As I mentioned earlier, tags are type identifier. They tell the receiver what the parameter represents. For example, if it's an MSISDN, MZ, or a global title. Normally, tag codes are just 1 byte, and they can hold values up to 30. However, the standard support larger values through something called extended tags, which encode the tags into more than 1 byte. But those tags or those format of tags, as extended tags, are not commonly used in mobile networks. And here's the interesting part. It seems that some firewall didn't implement the logic to handle this extended form properly. Instead, they just created messages with extended tags as malformed or broken. We tried to replicate the same technique during our field tests by changing the tag of MZ parameter inside a message called insert subscriber data. This message can be used to cause subscriber denial of service, traffic interception, tracking, or even fraud. We used the extended tag format. It carries the same value of the original tag, but just encoded into the extended form, 2 bytes in this case. The modified message went straight through the firewall, and we got successful response back. In this case, it caused a denial of service. That wraps up the mitigation section. Now let's move on to why this is happening and what can be done to mitigate it. Let's start with why this is happening. The SS7 protocol stack was designed back in the 70s. Many people expected that 2G and 3G networks would be gone by now, but the reality is that they are still there. And as long as they are, we have to keep paying attention to their security. Now we are seeing a big rise in SS7 firewall implementation across operators, which is a great progress. But the problem is many of these firewalls aren't configured properly. So the protection isn't as strong as it should be. Telecom security isn't that different from regular IT security. Sure, it has its own nuances, but mitigation logic is the same. It's more about knowing the telecom side well enough to apply standard security practices effectively. SS7 remains one of the easiest entry points for attackers compared to new technologies like LTE and 5G. The problem isn't just the age of the protocol. SS7 is highly complex with multiple layers, as we saw, and it's how different network elements process and interpret signaling messages that create these vulnerabilities. The difference in parsing. Different nodes respond differently to the same kind of packet. Uh, some implementations apply strict validation and handle data safely, while others may create malformed messages in unexpected ways, and this difference or inconsistency create opening for attackers. On top of that, telecom environments still lack the kind of mature monitoring and vulnerability management we usually see in IT networks. So what can be done about it? Of course, firewalls are essential, but they are not enough on their own. Operators needs oversight, someone actively watching what is happening inside the network, predicting possible exploit passes, and applying the right controls to stay ahead of attackers. For example, using telecom-specific intrusion detection system or IDS solutions can help in detecting suspicious signaling activities early. And just as important, operators should start moving toward firewall whitelisting modes, where only known and valid signaling messages are allowed, and malformed packets are blocked. This can be challenging to implement, mainly because of false positives, but with the right approach and the proper monitoring, it can be tuned effectively and reduce the number of false positives. That brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you all for your time and attention. I hope this talk gave you a clear view of why SS7 remains relevant, the risks it carries, and the practical ways to defend against these emerging attacks. If you have any question, please feel free to connect with me afterwards, and thank you again.